If there ever was a show that I adore, it would be Battle for Dream Island. Be it the original series, the one-episode reboot, or the current season, this show is amazing. It's a show that I've loved for 6 years now, and it's what I think is the best online show ever made. Not because of its characters, not because of its comedy, but because of its journey. In Season 1, all Coiny did was slap Fiery. Now he's carrying his team through the hardest of times. Characters like Brookie, Woody, Pin, Coiny and Bubble have grown this layer of emotional complexity over the past 10 years that made this show what it is today. And while this show may have started out as a show with one-dimensional characters and run-of-the-mill humour, this show has grown to it now being one of the most amazing, emotional and intellectual and funny shows on the internet. So hi, my name is Animation Review, and today I'm going to be ranking every episode of BFB. At number 22, this place goes to the only bad episode of BFB. And no, not because of 2. But BFB in and of itself is nothing good. Do you remember why people hated Ink Lemonade? You know, how people don't like characters being tortured in the episode not caring? Well, this is what happens here. Not only does the episode and later episodes not seem to care about 4, it also has some really unsettling scenes that are hard to sit through and are painfully unfunny. And that's without mentioning 2. Now, I'm on board with 97% of what this show has done, but Teapot is the worst decision the show's ever made. And not the basic idea of it either. The thought of splitting up the shows into one emotional and serious one and one light-hearted comedy with rougher animation is really good. It's just the choices for characters. Character arcs have come to an end at this point, but there are a few character arcs left out in the open, like the bath molecules argument that hadn't been touched since episode 2. That's why character choices are so baffling to me for these. Lollipop, Taco, Bubble, Leafy and Flower are all in BFB. The one designed to be the goofy comedy with rougher animation, not to mention 4. He had lost over half of his contestants and X. This was the perfect place to add amazing character arcs for a character who didn't really have anything. And while I have nothing against 2, he fits a comedy much better than the drama. This episode could have been a great gateway into a brand new era of BFB. Instead, it just became an unsettling mess. 39 out of 100. It luckily gets much better from here on out. Number 21, BFB 17 has this very gross out feel to it. The scene with 4 giving balloony fingers comes to mind, but also things like the 4 chewing scene, awkwardly unfunny and paced terribly. But other than that, its comedy doesn't have anything to offer, but executed pretty well, I guess. Like the flower petal gag. It's not really a joke, there's nothing to it, but the way it's paced catches you off guard, and at the very least make you lightly exhale through your nose. There's a lot of that in the episode, but the animation is surprisingly smooth for the show that was supposed to have rougher animation at this point. But it's presumably the new team flexing their animator muscles. This episode was a real letdown for modern BFB. I'm just happy that it got better. 61 out of 100, moving on. Number 20, we have BFB 12. Now, I don't know much about Bommy. Actually, I think this is the first time I think it's a she, you can never tell, talked. But it seemed out of character for her to demand a banana after having her life saved. It's great how Match accepted the fact that she was eliminated, though. It's a really good piece of character development, and Bubble's reaction to it was great. It's a nice piece of character development that shows that Bubble still wanted Match. He needs a match, not a leader, not a more useful version of Bracelety, but a true and honest friend. It's in character for Goldball to be this ignorant, and that's really how I feel about the whole episode outside of the Bubble and Match stuff. It's just normal. Its jokes weren't anything amazing. It's basically just another episode without the comedy of emotion that made the episode special. It's a real disappointment for the time that it was made. 64 out of 100. At number 19, we have BFB 20. Gelatin is being as childishly stupid as ever, and I can never tell whether or not I like that. What I find kind of funny is that the first time the Havcots were up for elimination in BFB 18, everybody voted Leafy because they were sympathetic toward him. But when they noticed that Bubble got the 3rd fewest votes, everybody turned right back to voting Bubble in BFB 20 because he's the only member of the alliance that hasn't been completely flanderized. The episode does go off the rails afterwards, and the final few minutes are really stupid, but it's an alright episode that I'd rate 70 out of 100. Number 18, we have I Don't Know. I didn't write down the name of the episode in the script, and so I've just stuck on this. I like the reference to BFB1 with the blueberry tree. Death Pact is acting incompetent, Pillar was like that, but Pem wasn't. The black hole gag was pretty funny, but the episode wasn't much to write home about, and I drank it 73 out of 100. At number 17, BFB3 is mostly dedicated to following through on things that have happened previously. It follows through on Leafy's alright in terms of execution, but the basic concept isn't really backed up with any evidence, really. Leafy isn't responsible for Roboty's death, and the phrase, "why did you kill Balloony so many times," is just annoying to me. The other thing that they follow through with here is the 8-ball leadership. It's nothing special. I felt for Golf Ball, but I feel there should have been more moments with Tennis Ball that could have put more of a value on their friendship. The episode also sets up what I think could be the best, most compelling and interesting character arc of the entire series, Book and Tacos. I feel that the episode didn't convey the argument enough. The ending with Lollipop suggests that they genuinely thought she was dead, and that's just stupid. Thankfully, it does get better though. Match is the same unlikable, mean-spirited character that she's been turned into. Donut has his usual speeches. They're pretty good, but nothing spectacular. All in all, I'd say that it's a good episode with some noteworthy problems. 74 out of 100. At number 16, we have number 15. I've never understood Firey's ignorance towards Leafy. In terms of the hang glider, they seem to be friends and Firey forgave Leafy. Yet here it just seems to be some character changes that never explained. Okay, side note, when I wrote this part, BFB 22 wasn't out yet and this complaint was valid. Either way, back to the video. This episode was good though. Nothing spectacular, so I drank it 74 out of 100. It's okay. Again, a little bit of a letdown considering what came out around it. Number 15, we have BFB 7. Match's conversation with Fanny is one of the only times where you really see Match caring for Alliance. Pin's faith in herself is restored here, and that's nice. The Death Pact argument about the bomb is justified, and the exit looks amazing. It's shocking that to show with visuals like these, you're going to have visuals like these. I enjoy the scene in the exit a lot. It's still a great episode. 77 out of 100. At number 14, we have BFB 18. This episode has some unfunny jokes, but the references are pretty good. It's small details like Leafy's speech being for the Algebra Awards because that's what they thought they were going to when they got eliminated. Flowers being her boring old desperate self. The modern BFB spirit is shown here more in the humour. Jokes are generally pretty good in this episode, although Loser is more of an arse here. This also creates Taco's arc and returns on the Leafy Firey arc. Though I think BFB 18 is a pretty good episode of BFB and I'd rate it 77 out of 100. At number 13, we have BFB 21. At the start with the gelatin joke with the jelly, could have been paced better than the full 11 seconds of them eating jelly. The Taco Woody character arc is only really good when it's displayed in conversations between Taco and Blocky. When the shoppers get to the factory, it's references galore though. From the bubble transformer to fork throwing to the reference that made me remember the joke in BFTI that caught me off guard the most.
You don't know anything! You're purple! This is...
Only sadists and meat tenderizer enthusiasts would buy that!
Little did anyone know that deep down, Firey was a meat tenderizing enthusiast. I enjoy the joke about how Lollipop doesn't like forks very much, although it didn't seem to be that much of an obsession against Hawks. It should have been something more obsessive. Woody at the end was a little annoying. I understand why he was angry, but the Woody in their heads was similar to Woody on the team. He's just been a dead weight recently, and people have treated him nicely because he's a person, or a block of wood. Either way, Woody hadn't helped the team in a while, but overall I'd say that BFB 21 is a nice episode and had some good character moments that are sweet, if not a little in your face.
You gotta stop defining your successes on how much others fail.
Oh, so now the talking
Taco.
is gonna preach to us.
I'd rate this episode 78 out of 100 overall. At number 12 we have BFB 5. Flower is really desperate in this. 4 was pretty funny though. BFB 5 is 79 out of 100 for me. Pin's monologue to his team was nice, but it could have done with some more support from Coiny. The ending gag with the voting menu is pretty creative, and overall this episode is alright. At number 10 we have BFB 19. This is an episode where everything is just great. It's probably the best episode of Modern BFB bar 1 so far, and I think that the episode has good humour. Blocky missing Woody is really nice. It shows that Blocky appreciates Woody's company, even if it's just been him attacking Woody for the past 10 years. Plus, that's a big change to make. a 10-year bullying streak that gets resolved soon afterwards. Don't be complaining that modern BFB doesn't have compelling character arcs. Overall, I think this is a great episode that expands on the character arcs and makes references and jokes all very subtly. The second half is far better than the first, and I'd rate it 80 out of 100. Number 9, we have BFB 13. Ice Cube wanting to think for himself is great, bringing another layer to his character. Brooks' conversation with Gatey is really good, and him looking himself up to find his definition has changed is really compelling. Also like how it doesn't happen immediately. The cliffhanger is also great, and it was torture having to wait 44 days for BFB 14. I will never forgive those cockroaches. I rate this 80 out of 100. Number 8, we have BFB 4. Now, I thought this episode would have been higher than number 8. My first opinion when watching it was that this was one of the best episodes of all time. But in recent terms, I've found some issues. Firstly, let me give you the perfect recipe for a ruined character arc. Step 1. Create a character with no real background, the main antagonist of the arc. Step 2. Make the protagonist someone who before was someone who got voted out quickly. Step 3. Don't develop this protagonist or how he's feeling. Step 4. After very little screen time is given to the arc, make the antagonist do a complete 180 for a stupid reason that comes completely out of left field. The episode does have redeeming qualities though. It's got one of my favourite scenes in the show. It also develops Toko's character arc, and it's developed better here. While the foundation for it isn't there, I still feel for Toko and yet understand Brooks' argument. The episode is great, but my problems with it still stand. But this still doesn't really devalue the best point in the episode, Eggy telling Teardrop her story. I would say that this is a really good episode, and I rank it 81 out of 100. Number 7, we have BFB 7. I think I mentioned this episode before, but wrong one, I guess. BFB 7 was an episode where everything was great, but there was nothing more to add. The Robot Flowers AI world looks really cool as well. The episode is pretty good, and I'd give it an 84 out of 100. Number 6. BFB 6. The Chesticle 4 is pretty cool to look at. The gag between tennis ball and golf ball goes on for a little too long, but it doesn't matter that much. It also creates a follow-through for the Toko character arc that lays a much better foundation than episode 4, and Pin and Corny make a surprisingly good duo. This is one of the only things that's developed from BFDIA, and it shows really well here. Overall, I'd rate it an 88 out of 100. Number 5, we have BFB 2. This episode was about creating and expanding on character arcs that were set before. Challenge is pretty creative, and what could have led to some gross out scenes are held back quite a lot. They can be a little too much at times, but not often. It sets up Foldy and State hatred for Lie. This episode, much like the first episode, was creating more character arcs that get expanded on further than the first ones do. And this episode also features a dab, reminding me of two things. 1, how much I hate 2017, and 2, how long ago BFB started. This episode was great and created as much that we remember today as did the first. I'd rate it 89 out of 100. Number 4, we have BFB 22. There are some new scene changes, like the courtroom and the BRB. It created a very cool change of style for BFB, and it addresses the issue I had with BFB 15. Also addresses Return of the Hang Glider, but as to people calling this the best episode, I will say that there are flaws with it. Like how BFB 21 pushed the idea that Woody isn't just terrified of everything. Yet here it's all that Woody is doing. But overall, I think that the episode is great, and I'd rank it 89 out of 100. Now in the top 3, we have episode 1 of the show. This episode sets up a lot that the rest of the series doesn't really follow through on. What it does do is develop its characters. With 64 characters, you'd think that the majority of them would be too bland and forgettable. But that's really the minority. Almost all of them have something, and while plenty of it gets left behind, spirits of characters are still there in a way that makes for a wave of likeable new character developments and interactions that create compelling drama. Likeable characters, and what I consider to be the best online series that there is. The introduction of 4 is also really good, but the biggest problem that I have with this episode is one that has sadly plagued all modern BFDI, and it's the flangerization of the Alliance. In the first season, the Alliance was strong and fairly three-dimensional, especially Match. The only reason that she got eliminated was she helped her Alliance member Bubble get out of the danger zone. But as the series went on, they became worse and worse. Pencil and Match became awful characters that became far more interested in destroying enemies than helping friends. And it came to the point where in IDFB, Pencil didn't even want Match out of TLC. The episode sadly follows in those footsteps. But other than that, I'd say that this is an amazing episode that created one of the greatest animation series of all time. Number 2, BFB 11. This is Ironce's episode. This is the episode that gives Match a personality. The conversation with Bubble is the second best thing in the entire show. Match had lost all her character that made her likeable in BFDI. She had to get put back into place by the last three-dimensional character in the Alliance. Ruby was never really three-dimensional, but I say only second best scene because the best scene is with Flower. Now, Flower was a character in BFDI who was mean, a bully sort of character. She was the first person to be eliminated in BFDI. But then when BFB came, she became a desperate character who wanted to stay in and do anything. This made her stay out of elimination, but it also made her a much more weak character. Tennisball proves this by saying,
"And don't even think of pushing me. People will vote for you if you do that."
At one point, she has reached breaking point. Brings out the non-slip shoes, bringing out not just the shoes, but her personality from 10 years ago. This episode is masterful, and I rate it 93 out of 100. It's my personal favourite, but there is one better than this. This is it. It's the magnum opus of not just BFB, but internet animation in general. BFB 14 may not be structurally anything amazing. I mean, 4 teams win using the same emerald and Woody ends up in Ford's eye, but I can forgive that because of everything else. Every character beat, every joke, every conversation, every sacrifice is portrayed brilliantly through the masterful writing and beautiful animation. Its jokes have this wit to it that never feels like it kills the tone. This episode is one of the funniest episodes as its surreal tone feels intelligent, yet this episode is also the most emotional. It's not just ham-fisted sacrifices to desperately try to pull at someone's heartstrings, it's genuine character moments that make sense. Overall, BFB 11 is just my favourite, just. I've loved the Alliance for years, but this episode is the best. 97 out of 100, it's the best thing the Object Show community has ever made. While modern BFB may never hold a candle to what the show was making back in 2019, I can say that that's completely fine, because the show still has that sense of wit and sometimes even emotion that makes BFB what it is. This was a video that I wanted to make so much that you may have noticed that I pushed aside the best series for it. And while Teapot isn't around yet, I hope that they're spending so much time on the writing and not the animation, because that's never what pulled us into BFB. But either way, my name is Animation Review. That was my review of Battle for BFDI. I hope you enjoyed, and I bid you good night.